From as early as I can remember, really, my parents had told me all through the years that Diana was at the hospital. And I've seen the photos, and I'm glad to have been part of it, of her life. That she met me even though I can't remember.
Grandma carries the memories, though, packing her bags to come to London for the funeral.
I know what else I can say. Just that I'm sad. But I'm pleased to be going just the same, you know, to pay my respects to everybody. But I am sad.
Like millions of others, the Williams family made today's journey to London, and like everyone else, they knew why they wanted to be here.
I was there at the beginning when she first became Princess of Wales, and it's nice to be there now and to pay your last respects. To see the end of the Princess of Wales. Well, it'll never be the end, she'll live forever in people's hearts.
Norman Rees, ITN.
Now, to talk us through the route, its landmarks and its historical significance, here's John Suchet.
This is the timetable. At 9:08, the procession will leave the grounds of Kensington Palace, the Princess's London home since her marriage in 1981, first with her husband and later alone, after the couple separated. It travels along the edge of Hyde Park, passing the Royal Albert Hall to the right. The coffin leaves the park through Apsley Gate next to Apsley House, the London home of the Duke of Wellington, then crosses Hyde Park Corner under Wellington Arch, which is never opened to traffic. Next, the procession approaches Buckingham Palace, the home of the sovereigns since Queen Victoria moved there in 1837. It passes the Queen Victoria Memorial and into the Mall. And it was down this great processional avenue in 1981 that the Princess and Prince Charles left Buckingham Palace in the evening of their wedding day as they headed towards Waterloo Station for their honeymoon at Broadlands in Hampshire. From here, the cortege will follow a long-established royal processional route, little changed for over 3 centuries, a route that the sovereign has taken for all important ceremonial occasions. Further down on the left, the grounds of St James's Palace, Prince Charles's London home, the sovereign's residence before Buckingham Palace. At the junction with Marlborough Road, on the left, tradition and the unique nature of the princess's funeral will blend as 500 members of her favourite charities join the procession. It moves then towards Horse Guards Parade. Along with other members of the royal family, the princess would watch the annual ceremony of Trooping the Colour from the large window above Horse Guards Arch. The procession passes under that arch, the archway of the old Admiralty building, and turns into Whitehall, passing Inigo Jones's banqueting house. Then there are the government buildings, the Cabinet Office, Downing Street and the Foreign Office, and on towards the Cenotaph. It then passes Big Ben, Westminster Hall and the Houses of Parliament. The procession crosses Parliament Square before reaching the great west door of Westminster Abbey.
One of the abiding images of this week of national mourning has been the flowers placed in memory of the princess. A solitary stem, an elaborate bouquet, all laid with sorrow and with reverence. The first arrived in a trickle at the royal palaces and around the country before dawn on Sunday. And since then, more than 1 million of them have transformed the entrances to the royal palace into fluorescent seas of colour. And with each one has come a special message, a special thought, a special declaration of love and respect. We are some of those who left the flowers to read their messages too.
In fondest memory of Diana, may William carry on your grace for your nation and the world. With our love, the McKissock family and friends.
And Diana, with love and affection, you're in our thoughts and touch our hearts. You're greatly missed. Stephen, Samantha, Mark, James, Deanna, Reg and Carol. Arkham from Essex.
Diana and Doddy, May you find happiness and peace at last. God bless you. You'll be greatly missed.
Princess Diana, thank you for lighting up our lives. You were a very special lady. Your kindness, thoughtfulness and loving nature gave joy to the whole world. We are really pretty certain that we will love your boys as much as we loved you. Rest in peace, and we know that you and Dodie are together. God bless you.
It's very simply written, Diana, to a very special lady. All our love, Jonathan, Sue and Oliver. We're from Kidderminster.
Diana, thanks for your love and compassion, which has given hope to so many you love and live for. From the Browns family and from Harrow.
To Diana and Dodie, our princess, our precious princess, touched the hearts of millions with her healing hands. Her beauty and kindness brought happiness to even more. It's comforting to know you had both found love with each other. You'll be remembered always. Good night, God bless, sweet dreams.
ITN has reporters right along the routes the coffin will follow, from Kensington Palace to Althorp. Let's sample a little of the atmosphere now and the emotion there, starting at Kensington Palace. James Mates is there. James, give us a sense of the atmosphere there.
Well, there are thousands of people here. This is obviously a popular vantage point. This is where the Princess of Wales's body has spent a last peaceful night, surrounded by 1,000 candles. The view this morning was of flames. This is in the early hours before dawn, with the flames flickering right the way across Kensington Gardens. Okay. Every tree was surrounded by flowers, by candles, by people, some sleeping, some sitting and contemplating, some praying.
And of course, James, around you, the crowds who will watch the coffin leave Kensington Palace this morning.
This is where you will get the first view of the King's Troop and the gun carriage coming down Palace Avenue and turning left, heading towards Hyde Park Corner. There are thousands here and still they're coming. Many have been here all night. Many were here yesterday afternoon to watch that extraordinarily solemn, mature appearance by the two princes, to see the flowers laid in tribute to their mother. They were here again last night to see the coffin brought home in the rain and the dark. They watched then in silence, and there'll be silence again this morning. Dropper.
James, thank you. Dermot Monaghan is at Buckingham Palace. Dermot, of course, the royal family having spent the night all together there at Buckingham Palace. A cross-section of members of the royal family were there last night, and this is where the royal family will leave from to head for the Abbey.
Yes, indeed, Trevor, and of course the royal standard still at this moment flying high above Buckingham Palace. When the Queen leaves, it will be replaced by the Union flag, which will fly at half-mast. That fuss about the flag that's gone on all week now put firmly behind us.
And are there people there too still waiting to see the family leave?
Yes, indeed, Trevor. Buckingham Palace has, of course, become the focal point almost for the nation's grief. And people here are very much aware that they're not just here as spectators, that they're very much an integral part of the proceedings. Many people, as we heard James saying, there have been here overnight. They've slept in cars, they've slept in tents, they've even slept on the grounds. And it got pretty chilly overnight, and one man I was talking to, was saying, yes, he was only in a T-shirt, said, yes, I was cold, but a hurricane wouldn't have dislodged me from here. I had to be here for this.
Dermot Monaghan, thank you. Julia Somerville is at Westminster Abbey. Julia, Dermot said that Buckingham Palace was the focal point of this, but of course the entire world will be watching the funeral service of Diana, Princess of Wales, from the Abbey today.
Yes, indeed. I mean, the focus of today will eventually become Westminster Abbey, and all the hundreds and hundreds, thousands indeed, of people who've flocked down here and are now massed around the building want to be here because they want to be at the very heart of what is happening today. And in fact, they will be able to hear the service. Up behind me in the trees there are speakers hanging, and so the whole atmosphere should be as reverential, really, outside as it will be inside.
Julia, what's the fate of all those people who have been camping out for 2 or 3 days to try to get closer to the Abbey? Will they have a greater advantage than the rest of us?
Well, the point about them is, I think that when they woke up this morning when it was still dark, I think their mood was subdued, if not perhaps a little depressed. After all, they had been, as you say, some of them sleeping out for 2 nights, and it rained yesterday and so on, but as the sun rose, so did their spirits, and I think now there's a real sense of anticipation, particularly now that some of the guests have started to arrive. I don't know whether you can see behind me, but there are people who have already arrived. The doors don't open until 9:30, but those that have arrived are inspecting the flowers and reading the messages, so there is beginning to be something for the people who've waited so long to actually look at.
Julia, thank you. Yes, indeed, we can see the people arriving. Moving memories of and tributes to Diana, Princess of Wales. Let's now hear from people who have travelled from all over the country. For the funeral, Jackie Ashley is among the crowds at Horse Guards Arch. Jackie Ashley?
Trevor, yes, I'm standing here outside Horse Guards Arch, and it's through this arch just behind us that in just a couple of hours the funeral cortege will come on the last leg of its journey down Whitehall. The street is absolutely packed, 8, 9, 10 people deep, and these people have all been standing by these crush barriers all night long. They've had no sleep, they've been standing here, but the mood is still very, very good-natured. Let me ask you first, what's it been like all night?
It's been a really good atmosphere. We've all made friends, and the night's passed really quickly.
When I got here, I thought you'd all come together, but in fact you all come separately.
Know each other. No, we don't know each other. We've just all met tonight.
And nobody seems to be suffering the effects of exhaustion.
No, I think it's at a time like this, it doesn't really matter. It's not too bad.
Let me come to you. What is it that made you come and stand here for the night?
I don't know. I just think I just needed to be here with everyone else. I just really need to share with everyone else, come and see and say goodbye to a princess and show everyone that we care. So.
Can I ask you, there've been a few people taken ill already because it has been a tremendous wait here. You think it's all worth it though?
Oh, it's well worth it. It's such an electrifying atmosphere down here. Everybody's been so warm and friendly, come together to pay their last respects and say goodbye to a princess who's been so wonderful to the whole nation, and just like to say our last goodbyes.
There have been polite ripples of applause for the police, but otherwise it's been quite quiet here. Do you think that it's going to stay that way?
Yes, I think it will do. I mean, a lot of people came down early this morning, but we've had nothing but calm, and people have just been wonderful.
It is a very moving atmosphere. Are people supporting each other, do you think?
Oh, definitely, definitely. We're all looking out for each other down here, and we're just pulling together and enjoying being here.
Let me come to you now, sir. Do you think you'll ever see an atmosphere like this ever again?
Well, no, never. It's a momentous occasion. There's only been one Princess Diana, that's it, period. She's been taken away, and it's so tragic. She was so compassionate, so loving, in spite of her own personal tragedies in her life. She managed to come through it all with flying colours. And I'm just so pleased that she was alive when she was alive. That's it, really.
Thank you all very much. Well, with that, back to you in the studio, Trevor.
Jackie Ashley in Horse Guards. And over in Hyde Park, scene of so many popular, joyous celebrations, tens of thousands of people are preparing to watch the funeral procession on huge screens erected there. ITN's Mark Webster is there with them.
Indeed, as you can see behind me, several hundred people did camp out here overnight. About 1,000 now, many thousands more are expected to watch the service on these giant screens by my side. But I have with me now some of the people who really do matter today, some of the millions who've made the journey to pay their respects to Diana. In fact, Alex and her daughter Lucy Dalmido and Joanne Braithwaite all met Diana, sadly in tragic circumstances, because Diana's sister, when she was only 11 years old, died. But Diana then did her best to try and comfort them. Now, Alex, perhaps I can turn to you first, because I know Diana's feeling a bit shy. But Alex, what are your favourite members then of Princess Diana?
It's just the way she moved. It was everything about her, really. She was very gracious, very polite, and she showed that she really cared about us, the people. And us being people, you know, we tend to think, well, you know, this lady showed us some love and compassion. We're here doing the same thing for her.
Now, Lucy, I know you were saying earlier, it's very difficult to come to terms with the fact that Diana has actually died. What are your memories of her?
She was a wonderful person. I think she touched everyone's lives, especially my friend Karen, and I think she'll be greatly missed, but I don't think she'll ever be forgotten.
What was it like talking to her?
I just felt extremely comfortable with her, and relaxed, and she shook all our hands, and she was very comforting.
And from today, do you hope at least to get a bit of solace out of being here?
Yes, definitely. I think if I come here, I can accept it more now, so I felt it was something that I had to do.
Yeah. For the family, Alex, I know your wife is here too.
Yes.
For the family, it must have been terribly important for you to be here and share this all together.
I think it was important of us that we had to physically come out and be somewhere to share, really, the upset and the tragedy that everybody's had. We're sitting here, our thoughts are on the rest of the royal family and the Fayed family, who have also suffered in this, just like the rest of us.
Yes, I know, Lucy, too. We were talking about the boys in particular. You were
Yes,
very
yeah.
impressed with the way they behaved yesterday.
Yes, definitely. I think they were very courageous. They had to stand up in front of everyone and be very strong, and shaking hands with the people and getting into contact was exactly what Diana did. So they were carrying on what she loved to do.
Yes, I know that certainly the people who are expected here, as I say, in their thousands later on today, will be expressing sentiments very much along those lines. Trevor.
Mark Webster at Hyde Park. They have, as we've seen, many aspects of Diana's funeral which are strikingly different from previous royal occasions, none more so than her final journey. As her coffin leaves the ceremonial heart of the capital, it will then pass through parts of North London which had never before been part of a state occasion, on its way to Northamptonshire. No doubt there'll be people watching the events along the entire route. But there's one place that the crowds won't be, and that is this tranquil island in the middle of the Althorpe Park, which will be the final resting place for the princess. Hugo Vickers, that seems a most appropriate place for the final resting place for the princess. It certainly looks tranquil. And what I think the Spencer family said was that, of course, the boys will be able to go there. My boys, as Princess Diana called the two young princes, will be able to go and visit their mother's grave.
Yes, there have been Spencers at Althorpe since 1506. She spent a lot of her early years there. I think it's an absolutely wonderful idea that they should bury her in the park on that lovely island. And as you say, it will be a mixture of two things. It will be possible for her boys to go there whenever they wish, but it will also be possible for what I think we will see is a long, perhaps for many, many years, visitors from the general public who will wish to pay their respects to her. So I think it's a really lovely decision.
It's another indication of this intersection which marks and defines so much of Diana's life, belonging in part to the old institution, the old monarchy, but also part of the sort of that modern phenomenon, modern celebrity, Robert Lacey.
That's right, and one can't help being struck by how articulate everybody is in the crowd about their feelings, talking in a way which I think is quite new in Britain, and I think that may be one of her most enduring memorials. She was someone always trying to get in touch with her feelings, and here is everyone else doing exactly the same thing.
Of course, I think part of the tempo, part of the rhythm of what's happening today was set by that broadcast by the Queen, who called her somebody of exceptional ability and somebody of exceptional heart and good nature. It was really quite a fulsome tribute from Her Majesty.
Yes, it was, and it must have been a very difficult thing for her to do, and I think she did it extremely well, with great dignity. She answered all the points that have been risen in the course of the week, and she paid a very, very full tribute to Princess Diana. She spoke to us not only, as she said, as a grandmother, but also as our Queen, and I think we were feeling that we wanted to hear something from her.
And for some more crowd scenes now, here's my colleague John Suchet.
And we'll bring you up to date with the scenes now outside the main venues for today's funeral. This is Kensington Palace, and it's just about 10 minutes from now that the Princess's cortege will leave here. You may recall the remarkable scenes last night of the hearse bringing her coffin to Kensington Palace. A constellation of flashlights going off as her car passed, just as it did to her in her life. These are the gates there to Kensington Palace through which the gun carriage bearing her coffin will pass. Crowds standing 10 or more deep, 15, 20 deep. and a little way across town to Buckingham Palace. And you may recall the scenes there yesterday, the unprecedented scenes of the Queen and the Duke of Edinburgh on their walkabout before they even went into the palace, having flown down from Balmoral. And the applause they received from the crowd. And one person handed the Queen a bouquet and she said, "Is it really for me?" And at Westminster Abbey, a short distance away, at the end of the processional route, the mourners have already begun arriving to take their seats. The great west door there of the palace. The mourners are beginning to arrive. A little earlier we saw 2 nuns from Mother Teresa's order, the Sisters of Mercy. And let's not forget that the world has lost a second woman of great compassion. Members of the charities to which the princess belonged are beginning to arrive. And there will be a few of the great and the good there today, former prime ministers, the present government, but the majority of mourners are her close personal friends, drawn, we understand, from her Christmas card list. Stars from the world of show business.
Let's go now to Michael Brunson, our political editor, who is at Buckingham Palace in our studio there. Mike, there's been a cessation of conventional politics this week, but of course it's been impossible to take politics entirely out of what's been happening with the princess's funeral.
You're quite right. Parliament is in recess at the moment, and therefore political activity is always a little lower at this time. But during that time, normally, you get the daily press conferences that the parties want to have and things like that. There has been nothing of that at all. Mr. Blair has had 1 or 2 meetings at Downing Street, but a complete cessation, as you say, of political life as we know it. I think an editorial in the Daily Mail catches it rather well this morning. The headline on the editorial is "A Silence That Unites the Nation." And he makes the point, even the bitterly acrimonious devolution debate in Scotland has been overwhelmed for the time being in the national sense of loss. That poll, of course, theirs is due to take place 6 days from now, and yet all activity in that most important campaign that will resume on Monday has been completely suspended. And it's perhaps worth making the point also about the papers. The papers were leading the criticism during the middle of the week, but the Express this morning, the royal family won back the hearts of the British people yesterday. The Mirror this morning, the Queen had been criticised for being uncaring and out of touch. No one can say that now. Only perhaps the Sun newspaper, drawing just a little cautionary note. Let us hope we're seeing a new monarchy, one that's more human, less detached and more in touch.
Michael Brunson, thank you. The idea that the princess was the queen of people's hearts wasn't simply an invention of the newspapers seeking to label her or the wish of an admiring public. Diana called that role hers for herself. She expressly said that that's what she wanted to be. So just before we see her coffin brought out from Kensington Palace, let's again look back now on Diana's life in pictures, and with a few words that she used about the guiding principles of her life. They're set to Grieg's Piano Concerto, a work that she was known to adore.
Life is mostly froth and bubble. 2 things stand like stone: kindness in another's trouble, courage in your own. I lead from the heart, not the head. And albeit that's got me into trouble in my work, I understand that. But someone's got to go out there and love people and show it. I'd like to be a queen of people's hearts, but I don't see myself being queen of this country.
Memories in words and images of a remarkable life. We're now waiting for the moment when the coffin of Diana, Princess of Wales, is brought out from Kensington Palace to begin its journey to Westminster Abbey, the formal start of this day of remembrance. To describe the procession, let's now join our colleagues John Suchet and Nicholas Owen.
Kensington Palace. At the gates there, hundreds and thousands of bouquets. Crystal clear or early autumn morning, the sun warming the streets. It was a chilly night, and the weather forecast is good. The dry weather will hold. The gates to Kensington Palace, through which in a few moments' time the gun carriage will pass, bearing the coffin of the Princess of Wales. Crowds have been lining these streets for several days and swarmed across it indeed last night as the hearse brought the coffin into the palace, back to the princess's London home. The palace courtyard, through the gates, the palace staff waiting the princess to emerge. And we see the lead horses now bringing the gun carriage. Soldiers of the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, bringing the gun carriage. The crowds have fallen totally silent, eyes fixed on the gates. And silence will mark this procession. No military bands, no music, no shouts of command. Silence. Temporarily hidden from our view, the police that will lead the procession, waiting there for it to emerge. Police are lining the route, facing inwards. If this were a state funeral, it would be soldiers facing outwards. But it's very unlikely the police will have any order to keep today. gun carriage leaves the London home of the Princess of Wales. Now we can see why the coffin was hidden from view. It was to place the bouquets on top. There are 3 there, from Earl Spencer, the princess's brother, and from her 2 sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. A bouquet from Prince Charles will be added when the coffin reaches Westminster Abbey. And in a moment, as it passes through the gates, the crowds will get their first close-up view of the coffin. And it will slowly turn to the left and begin its final journey. Just the sound of horses' hooves and some gasps from the crowd. We can hear the tears in the crowd. It was inevitable. Goodbye, England's Rose. Words which by the end of today will have entered the language. Single candle is sometimes all it needs. The extraordinary thing is that Despite the sheer numbers on the streets, this is not public grief. It's private grief, multiplied millions of times over. Utter shock on people's faces. How do you say goodbye to someone who died so suddenly? People calling out her name, we can hear from the crowd. To a princess who combined dignity with warmth, protocol with spontaneity. And that surely was the secret of her appeal, not just to the people of Britain, but across the world.
In a moment,
Well, has ever such a mix of people gathered together on the streets of any city in the world? Young and old. We saw a picture earlier in the week of a punk rocker standing next to a Chelsea pensioner at the gates of Buckingham Palace, united in their grief. Seen inside Hyde Park. This journey will take around an hour and 3/4 to make its way from Kensington Palace through Hyde Park, then joining the great processional route to Westminster Abbey. The soldiers of the King's Troop, Royal Horse Artillery, in charge of the gun carriage. In their famous bearskin hats, busbies as we like to call them, the Welsh Guards, who will be the bearer party at the Abbey. flowers being tossed in the path of the gun carriage, as they were last night when the hearse brought the Princess of Diana back to Kensington Palace. And that's nice. That may well be an indication of some French mourners in the crowd. It's traditional in France to applaud at a funeral like this. And we know how deeply the French have felt this loss. Several bouquets, many bouquets at the palaces from French people here apologizing for the fact that this happened in their country. This is such a unique event, not only never seen before here, but really anywhere in the world, that it's difficult to know how people are going to respond. But the overwhelming reaction is just silence. Look at those fine horses. They're black horses, chosen for the uniformity of their blackness. 6 of them, bred in Ireland for their exceptional strength. And they're all members of the British Army, enlisted with their army number engraved on their hooves. I can tell you that they will have been fed slightly lighter rations last night to keep them alert today. And they were exercised this morning before dawn. And very shortly the cortege will pass up into Hyde Park. Soldiers of the King's Troop with their gold braid. And it is the King's Troop, not the Queen's Troop. It used to be the riding troop. But King George VI went to a regimental dinner and afterwards signed the regimental book, and he crossed out the word riding and he wrote the word Kings. And when the Queen came to the throne, she decreed that it would remain forever the King's Troop. Solitary flowers tossed by mourners. The gun carriage is a weapon of war, and it saw active service in the First World War. This is a new gun carriage, but gun carriages have been used at the funerals in London of Edward VII, King George V, King George VI, Sir Winston Churchill, the Duke of Windsor, and Earl Mountbatten, and Princess Diana. And it is, if you like, the ultimate symbol of the acceptance of Diana back into the royal family. Our royal correspondent, Nicholas Owen, is with me. A deeply significant choice, Nick.
Yes, of course, when the princess was divorced from Prince Charles, she did in legal sense cease to be a member of the royal family, but the Queen made it clear straight away that although Diana was no longer to be Her Royal Highness, she was to be regarded as a member of the royal family, and now, in death, she truly is.
Some have said that perhaps to use a weapon of war is a little inappropriate.
Yes, they will think of the princess's dedication to causes of peace, especially her campaign against landmines, which took her to Angola and very recently to Bosnia. Campaign which didn't always go down well with those in authority, but might actually have changed the attitude of the whole world
single candle again, all it needs. It's the sheer disbelief of this event. Someone once said, when they were told of someone they admired had died, they said, "I don't have to believe it if I don't want to." Millions don't want to, and they almost refuse to accept it. They keep wanting to wake up and find it was just a bad dream. The bouquets are of white lilies, and the white lily is the traditional flower of mourning. Atop the princess's standard. The royal standard underneath. Bouquets from, as I said earlier, the princess's brother and her 2 sons. And the 1st Regiment, the Welsh Guards, who will bear the coffin when it arrives at the Abbey. And the coffin is just about level with the Royal Albert Hall. And we can show you Princess Diana as she attended events at the Royal Albert Hall. Here she was guest of honour with the Prince of Wales at the birthday ball in aid of Birthright in 1985. The Princess was at that time the patron of Birthright. A reminder there of how the Princess was associated with so many aspects of our lives. Indeed, it's only really since her death that so many people have found out in just how many ways she was associated with our lives that maybe we didn't know. You can just see behind the crowd there the base of the Albert Memorial, which is in the process of being refurbished. A very long process it is too. This is quite extraordinary, just the sound of horses' hooves. Normally you would hear military bands marching, but just horses' hooves, and in the crowd, silence. The cortege is now moving up into Hyde Park. And in a moment it'll wheel round to the right towards Apsley House, the Duke of Wellington's home. Chill of early autumn. Sun's shining, but it's cold there.
It's so often said that as a nation we find it hard to express grief. Well, that's not true anymore, is it?
In fact, the tragedy of the princess's death was first known about in large numbers in Australia and the Far East, where it was already afternoon, and many people here were woken by a phone call in the middle of the night from family or friends in Australia or Hong Kong to be told, no, they said, it can't be true. Soldiers' arms never swing when they're marching alongside a coffin. And we're going to cross to Westminster Abbey, the destination of the cortege, where guests have begun arriving, mourners have begun arriving. The nave, the choir screen at the end of it. We see the singer Sting there towards the back with his wife, Trudy Styler. We'll see many figures from the world of show business with which the princess was so closely associated. There will be around 2,000 guests, slightly less, which is the capacity of the Abbey. Sir David Frost, who interviewed the princess many times. his wife, Lady Karina. And Sir Richard Attenborough and his wife. Sir Richard was a great personal friend of the Princess. In fact,